Somewhere in a museum drawer in Colombia sit small golden objects shaped almost exactly like modern fighter jets, complete with wings, a tail fin, and a vertical stabilizer. They're over 1,000 years old. No one has ever fully explained why an ancient goldsmith, who had never seen an airplane, would carve something with that exact aerodynamic shape. Today, I'll show you 8 ancient tools that modern science still can't fully explain. Not what they look like, not how they were used, and in some cases, not even what they actually are. Each one on this list gets stranger than the last on one key point. In the final one, you'll see a tool so precisely engineered that a modern laboratory needed specialized equipment just to figure out how it was even made. And around every single one of these 8 objects, the same question keeps coming back. How did people without our technology build something we still can't fully copy? Stay until the end, because the last one has been sitting in plain sight, outdoors, for over 16 centuries, and it still refuses to explain itself. The Antikythera mechanism. Greece. In 1901, sponge divers off the coast of a small Greek island are working an ancient shipwreck when they pull up a corroded, unremarkable lump of bronze. It goes to a museum in Athens and, for decades, sits there almost completely ignored, catalogued as some kind of decorative fragment, nothing more. It isn't until X-ray and later CT scanning technology arrives, generations later, that scientists finally understand what they've actually been holding this entire time. Inside that corroded lump are over 30 precision bronze gears, interlocking with tooth counts accurate enough to track the position of the sun, the moon, and 5 visible planets, and even predict eclipses years in advance. Some gears have teeth less than 2 millimeters apart, cut with a level of consistency that modern researchers initially assumed required machine tools to achieve. Radiocarbon and stylistic dating place the device at around 2,100 years old. Nothing this mechanically complex appears again anywhere in the historical record for at least another 1,000 years. An entire millennium with no equivalent object, no simplified version, no obvious next step in the technology. The engineer who designed this device remains completely unknown. We don't have their name, their workshop, or a single other confirmed object built with the same precision. It's as if a single genius appeared once, built something centuries ahead of its time, and then the knowledge simply vanished with them. The Baghdad Battery, Iraq near Baghdad. In the 1930s, an archaeologist working a dig site uncovers a small clay pot, barely the size of a drinking glass, containing a copper cylinder wrapped around an iron rod, the whole assembly sealed in place with asphalt. Dating places the object somewhere between 250 BC and 250 AD, depending on which layer of the site it actually came from. Here's where it gets strange. When modern researchers filled a physical replica of this exact object with an acidic liquid, something as simple as vinegar or grape juice, it produced a small but measurable electrical charge. This isn't a theory. It's been physically built and tested multiple times by different research teams, and it works. What it was actually used for is where the real mystery begins. Some researchers argue it was used for electroplating, running a small current to deposit a thin layer of gold onto another object, a technique that would predate the accepted timeline for electroplating by well over 1,000 years. Others insist the electrical function is coincidental, and the object was never meant to generate a charge at all, but was simply a container for storing and protecting sacred scrolls, with the metal components serving a purely structural or ritual purpose. No written instructions, no diagrams, and no second confirmed device from the same era have ever surfaced to settle the argument either way. The pot ended up in a museum in Baghdad, and its exact purpose left with whoever built it. Damascus steel swords. Middle East, 5 o'clock. Starting around the 3rd century, blacksmiths across the Middle East begin producing a distinct type of sword using a specific imported steel from India, and the results reportedly bordered on the impossible, for their time. According to historical accounts, these blades were sharp enough to cut through a piece of silk floating gently in midair, and flexible enough to bend almost double without snapping or losing their edge. Two properties that, in normal steel, usually work directly against each other. Run your eye down one of the surviving blades and you'll notice a distinctive wavy, almost water-like pattern flowing through the metal. That pattern comes from a microstructure that modern metallurgists have only recently begun to fully map out. In 2006, one research team went as far as examining a genuine Damascus blade under an electron microscope and found carbon nanotubes embedded directly inside the steel, a nanoscale structure that wouldn't even have a name for another 1,200 years. Then, sometime around the 18th century, the original supply of that specific raw ore from India simply ran dry. And with it, the exact technique for producing true Damascus steel disappeared along with the smiths who knew it. Modern bladesmiths can now produce steel that looks similar on the surface, with a comparable wave pattern. But metallurgists are still divided on whether any modern reproduction actually matches the original's internal structure. The recipe was never written down. It lived only in the hands of masters passing it to apprentices, and when that chain of teaching broke, the real formula broke with it. If ancient objects this precise are pulling you in, hit subscribe now, because the next 5 are even harder to explain. The Colombian golden jets enter South America. In museum collections scattered across Colombia and Central America sit dozens of small gold artifacts, each roughly the size of your palm, crafted somewhere between 500 and 800 AD by pre-Columbian goldsmiths working long before any European contact with the region. Their shape is what has made them genuinely famous outside archaeology circles: a narrow central body, 2 swept-back triangular wings, and a distinct vertical fin rising from the rear. A layout that several aviation engineers, looking at photographs decades later, immediately compared to the aerodynamic profile of a modern delta-wing aircraft. Conventional archaeologists identify the objects as stylized, symbolic depictions of local animals. Flying fish are the most commonly cited explanation, along with insects and birds rendered in an abstract artistic style typical of the region and period. That's still the mainstream academic position today. But in 1997, a small team of aeronautical engineers decided to test something. They built scaled-up models, directly copying the proportions of the original artifacts without adding any of their own aerodynamic corrections, attached small engines, and flew them successfully as remote-controlled aircraft. Whether that flightworthiness is meaningful evidence of ancient aeronautical knowledge or simply an accidental byproduct of a shape that happens to fly well no matter its original purpose remains fiercely debated between engineers and archaeologists to this day. What isn't debated is that the goldsmiths who actually made these objects left behind no written records at all explaining what they were meant to represent, leaving everyone after them to guess. The Phaistos disc, Crete discovered in 1908 inside the ruins of a Minoan palace on the island of Crete.
Look at these colors.
This small disc of fired clay, roughly the size of a saucer, is stamped on both sides with 241 tiny symbolic images, human figures, tools, plants, and animals, arranged in a spiral that runs from the outer edge steadily inward toward the center. Dating places it at around 1700 BC, deep in the Bronze Age. Here's the detail that has kept linguists arguing for over a century. Every single one of those 241 symbols was pressed into the wet clay using a separate carved seal or stamp, meaning whoever made this disc was effectively using a printing technique, stamping repeated characters into a surface, roughly 3,000 years before Johannes Gutenberg's printing press changed European history. That alone makes it one of the earliest known examples of anything resembling movable type on the planet. But no second Phaistos disc has ever been found. No related inscription using any of the same 241 symbols has ever turned up anywhere else in Crete, Greece, or the wider Mediterranean world. Without a second reference point to compare it against, cryptographers and linguists have no way to translate the symbols with any confidence. Dozens of decoding attempts have been published over the last 100 years, proposing everything from a prayer to a hymn to a military calendar. And not one of them has earned lasting academic acceptance. The disc's language, its purpose, and whatever message it was meant to carry remain completely unread to this day. The Nazca line sighting tools, Peru stretching across roughly 450 square kilometers of Peru's arid coastal plain, are hundreds of enormous geoglyphs, animals, plants, and precise geometric shapes, some individual lines running over 300 meters long, created by the Nazca people sometime between 500 BC and 500 AD, simply by removing a thin layer of reddish, sun-darkened surface stone to reveal the much paler ground underneath. The lines are so large, and in many cases so geometrically precise, that a significant number of them are only fully recognizable as complete images from high in the air, which raises the obvious central question. How did people with no known way of getting airborne design shapes with that level of accuracy while working entirely at ground level? Archaeologists studying the site have found simple wooden stakes still preserved at the endpoints of several of the lines, suggesting the Nazca used basic surveying tools, stretched ropes, sighting poles, and small-scale reference models to plot out the larger geometry piece by piece from the ground, essentially scaling up small drawings into massive, full-size versions using proportional measuring techniques. That explains the mechanics reasonably well. What it doesn't explain is the motivation. The Nazca left behind no writing describing why they built figures on a scale that they themselves, standing on flat ground, the Voynich Manuscript, unknown origin. Named after the antique book dealer who acquired it in 1912. This roughly 240-page manuscript is written entirely in an unknown script that, to this day, doesn't reliably match any known human language living or dead. Alongside the mysterious text sit detailed, carefully drawn illustrations of plants that don't correspond to any scientifically identified species, strange astronomical and astrological-style diagrams filled with unfamiliar symbols, and unusual images showing groups of women bathing together in green liquid inside what appear to be connected tubes or plumbing systems. Radiocarbon dating carried out in 2009 placed the manuscript's vellum pages firmly in the early 1400s, meaning the physical object itself is genuine and centuries old, whatever its actual contents turn out to mean. That single fact has ruled out one popular theory, that the entire manuscript is a modern hoax created for financial gain. Codebreakers have thrown serious resources at it for over a century, including several of the same professional cryptographers who worked on breaking the Enigma machine during World War II. Every claimed decipherment published so far has eventually collapsed under closer scrutiny from other linguists, torn apart for cherry-picking patterns that don't hold up across the entire text. To this day, no one knows for certain what language it's written in, what the unidentified plants are actually supposed to represent, or whether the entire 240-page book is a genuine scientific or medical text from its era, or an extraordinarily elaborate historical hoax that simply predates the technology we'd normally use to catch one. Would you trust a translation of the Voynich manuscript if someone finally claimed to crack it? Or has too much time passed to ever really know for sure? The Iron Pillar of Delhi, India. Standing quietly in the Qutub complex in Delhi is a solid wrought iron pillar over 7 meters tall and weighing more than 6 tons, forged sometime around the 4th century AD under the Gupta Empire. At first glance, it doesn't look particularly unusual, just a tall iron column with an inscription near its base. What makes it remarkable isn't its size at all. It's the fact that after roughly 1,600 years, standing completely outdoors this entire time, directly exposed to monsoon rains, humid air, and temperature swings with zero modern protective coating, it has developed almost no meaningful rust or corrosion. Modern metallurgical analysis has found that the iron used contains unusually high levels of phosphorus, combined with virtually no sulfur or manganese, a specific chemical balance that, together with the local climate, triggered the natural formation of an extremely thin, self-healing protective layer on the pillar's surface, one that actually repairs minor damage to itself over time rather than simply eroding further. Ancient smiths achieved this through a very particular forging process, using specific ore sources and repeated hot working techniques that modern industrial steelmaking generally doesn't replicate, largely because the exact mechanism behind the pillar's resistance wasn't properly rediscovered and scientifically understood by metallurgists until relatively recently in the last few decades. The original smiths who built it left behind an inscription praising a king, but never wrote down the forging technique itself or their reasoning for using it. 8 ancient tools. 8 completely different kinds of impossible. 1 tracked the stars with gears smaller than a coin. 1 may have generated electricity before anyone had a word for it. 1 produced a blade. Metal modern labs are still studying under electron microscopes. 1 printed symbols into clay roughly 3,000 years before printing was supposed to exist. 1 shape flew successfully as a scaled-up model, thousands of years after it was first carved in gold. 1 remains completely unread in a language nobody alive can identify. And 1 has resisted rust for 16 straight centuries, standing outdoors in the open air the entire time. It's not that ancient people were somehow mystically smarter or more advanced than we are today. It's that so much of their most precise knowledge lived only in memory, passed hand to hand, master to apprentice, and was never written down in any form that could survive them. When that chain of teaching broke, even just once, the knowledge simply vanished. All that was left behind was the object itself, sitting quietly in a museum case, refusing to explain how or why it was ever made. If even one of these tools genuinely surprised you, drop a comment below and tell me which one you'd most want scientists to finally crack. I read every single comment. And if you want to keep discovering objects we built, lost, and still can't fully explain, hit that subscribe button and tap the bell so you don't miss the next one. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.